Today's video, I'm going to be doing a by-the-book oil change that applies to any Scout. Just want to say, I'm not a professional mechanic. I do DIY for myself. These videos are just for, follow along kind of like entertainment purposes. If you don't understand what you're doing, or you don't have the service manual or the owner's manual and you're not comfortable doing the work, take your bike to the dealer or a qualified mechanic. Now I got that out of the way. I just wanted to say, you are probably going to need one of these guys, or at least your owner's manual to refer to. I'm using my manual, which covers 2015 through 17. There might be a newer version of the factory service manual where some of this information's been superseded, which is one of the reasons why you do this at your own risk. This is the page that the instructions are in the service manual, chapter 2, section 11 here. One of the things it notes is 15 foot-pounds, 20 newton meters for the drain bolts. These are steel bolts. They thread into the aluminum casing of the engine. That seems like an awful lot of torque to me. I'm probably gonna back that off slightly. Either I'll do it by hand or I will just reduce the torque a little bit, because people have stripped out the bolts. It is definitely not a situation that you want to be in. You either have to heel coil to fix it, or worse yet, you'll have a trip to the dealer and a very large expense bill. Going by the book, I'm going to read through this list really quick and then we'll start on the actual process. Caution, it talks about there being hot components because you need to run the bike to warm it up to temperature. Run engine until warm, then turn engine off. Securely support motorcycle in a vertical centered position. What they mean by that is they don't want it leaning over on a side stand. So maybe you get a little block of wood to put it on the side stand so that it's more vertical, but you gotta be careful, because if it, you get to the tipping point, it could fall over on you. So be careful with that. Place an oil drain pan under the bike, obviously. Remove drain plugs and sealing washers. This is pretty easy to understand. Allow oil to drain completely, dispose of oil properly. No kidding. Remove oil filter and allow oil to drain. Dispose of oil filter properly. Just common sense stuff, right? Clean the engine, oil filter mounting sealing surface and surrounding area. Place a small amount of oil on the new filter seal and spin filter on until filter seal contacts the sealing surface. Tighten oil filter to specification. 115 inch-pounds, 13 newton meters, or approximately 3/4 to 1 full turn after the seal contacts the filter mounting sealing surface. Basically, once the seal seats in there, you give it just a little bit more of a turn. You should be able to take the filter off by hand. If you have to use a tool to get the filter off, you over tighten it to begin with. Use a new sealing washer and reinstall the drain plugs. You need to crush washers. I've seen people anneal these things before, and sometimes they still leak. The torque, which is something I probably won't be following even though I'm doing it by the book, is 15 foot-pounds or 20 newton meters on the drain plug. I think you only need enough torque to just slightly deform that copper washer. You don't need to lay into it, because you can strip those threads out in the engine case. It's aluminum and you got a steel bolt going in there, so be careful. This may have been superseded in a newer version of the service manual. Mine goes up to 17, so it's a little bit older service manual, so verify that. Use a funnel, add 3 quarts, 2.8 liters of Indian 15W60 full synthetic engine oil through the engine oil dipstick hole. We'll get to that in a sec. It says 3 quarts will bring the engine oil level at or near the full mark on a dipstick. For a new or rebuilt dry engine, an additional 0.5 quart or 0.47 liters is required. Idle engine for 30 seconds. Remove the dipstick, wipe clean, reinsert, fully tighten the dipstick, remove the dipstick, read the engine oil level, and add engine oil as required to bring oil level on the dipstick to the full mark. Do not overfill. Total engine oil fill volume with filter change will be approximately 3 to 4 US quarts. 3 to 4. Real accurate here, right? 2.8 to 3.8 liters. Total engine oil fill volume with a new or rebuilt dry engine will be approximately 4.5 quarts. Well, at least that's a little closer than 3 to 4 quarts. The rest of it goes through is refer to checking the engine oil, for setting the proper oil level. Basically, you run the engine for 30 seconds, you check the dipstick, then you fill up as required, then you run the engine again until it gets warm again, then check it when it's warm. That's when you're supposed to check level on Scout, is when the engine's warm, not when it's cold. Check for leaks around drain plug and oil filter. Recycle your oil. That is all the steps. Right there. It's all on one page. As I go through it myself, there are a few things that I do a little differently that will save you a little bit of hassle. Now, before I fire this bike up and get the engine warm enough that it's gonna burn you, there's two things I do first. I have the Bassani Road Rage 2-in-1 aftermarket exhaust, so this is a little easier for me. But the factory exhaust downpipe for the back cylinder comes down at an angle right where the fill plug is, you know, your dipstick. While it's cold, go ahead and crack it loose so that you're not struggling to loosen it when the bike is screaming hot, because sometimes this thing sticks in there pretty good because maybe the last person cranked it on really tight. So if you do it now, you know, it's so much easier to get that sucker off when this thing is screaming hot. While the engine's still cold, loosen, don't remove, just slightly loosen, just a little bit, the oil filter. Probably a quarter, an eighth of a turn, and I'm not feeling any oil on my hand, but I was able to just a little eek on the filter here. That way, again, when the motor's screaming hot, you aren't gonna burn yourself trying to get that thing loose. Also, now's the time to figure out whether or not you're gonna need an oil filter wrench. Not when it's already screaming hot and you got half the oil dropped out of it and you're in the middle of doing it. A couple of things I recommend you have. Just a pair of gloves, and these are like mechanics gloves, but they're disposable. Just to protect you from the heat, because the engine's going to be quite warm when you drop the oil. You need a torque wrench if you're going to follow the factory spec. I'm not going to use this. I've got it out for display purposes only. I've only ever tightened these by hand and they've never leaked. Got my little ratchet for a reason. You know, if I had a standard ratchet with a handle out to here, you get a lot more leverage and you could put a ton of torque into that. But I'm just going to get them snug and just maybe like a little quarter turn past snug. And that is all they need. Next thing you're going to need is a 6mm Allen driver. You're also gonna need the oil change kit, but that is the filter number. Now, I think High Flow makes a filter that will fit this bike. There's a couple other companies that make filters, but what you can't get is this guy. This is what you're gonna need if you're gonna do it without the Indian kit. You are gonna need this crush washer. You're gonna actually need 2 of them. Comes in the kit, which is why I just buy the kit. The kit also comes with 4 quarts of this type of oil here. That is a 15W60, which is a little unusual, full synthetic oil. It won't use all 4 quarts. It will use 3 and a little. So you're gonna end up accumulating a bunch of half-used Indian jugs of oil. The other thing you're gonna need is a drain pan, something to clean with. It could be simple green. I got some brake cleaner. Some of these guys here, you know, the old ubiquitous blue shop towel. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start the bike up. And we're gonna let it idle. We're gonna let it idle until the fan kicks on. That's how I'm gonna know that it's at the right temperature. Now we just wait for the fan. All righty, it is at 206. Convenient to have that temperature gauge on the digital readout there. Well, she's nice and hot, and I have the garage open. I have not been in here while this is running, by the way. Obviously, you know, carbon monoxide, duh, and you know, garage doors open. So let it ventilate out. Let this cool for just a little bit, so it's not so stupid hot, because it's still almost 200 degrees. It's 199. The fan is now off. So here in the next few minutes, we can go ahead and drop the oil out. So, oil drain pan. This guy under there. You probably want to get a pan that's big enough, or at least long enough, that it will cover both the drain bolts and where the oil filter is. Loosen that guy up. Loosen the back one up. Just loosen these. You're going to spin them off by hand. You just need room to get at them, really. I just like to use the socket itself to spin it off, mainly because it makes it easier to pull the bolt out. Now, I'll loosen it to the point where I feel like it's getting ready to come off, and then I'll just pull it out of the way quickly. That keeps you from burning yourself. And see, it came off with the washer. Same deal as the front. I'm going to loosen the plug until I can feel it just at the edge of the threads with the socket, and then pull it out. And that's it. Now I'll adjust my oil pan here so that my 2 drain plugs are covered, but I also have it underneath where the oil filter is. And kind of reach in here with my hand. And because I already kind of scooched it loose a little bit, now I don't have to use a wrench or reef on it to get it out. Just about. Got it. There we go. So, I play Jenga with the pan. There we go. Filter out. And this is why we loosened this before we started the bike. I'm just going to go ahead and loosen it all the way up. But yeah, if you had the original exhaust that came down here, that would be a tight situation with a very hot engine. While I'm playing the waiting game on the oil to drain down, I'm just going to clean and prep my plugs here, make sure they're good to go. Because now's the time, if you realize that your drain plugs look like crap, or if you rounded off the Allen bolt from years of doing this, you probably should have ordered those in advance, right? Oh well. I said it was by the book. I didn't say it was for smart people. New crush washer is ready to go. Put them in place so that they're ready to reinstall. I'll take some Earl here, get a little bit on my clean glove and make it not so clean. Oil up the gasket. I'm also going to put a little bit of oil in the filter just so it's not completely dry on startup. Now, it doesn't say this in the service manual, and if you fill it completely up, I mean, the filter is sideways, right? So if you fill it up and you try to put it in, it's just gonna leak. It's gonna spill out everywhere. I'll fill it about 1/3 of the way up with fresh oil. It'll get in there, it'll soak the filter medium, and it should be good enough so that you're not starving the engine of oil on startup. So this has been draining down now for about 45 minutes, and I'm gonna go ahead and start the reassembly process. So what I like to do is I'll take and I'll slide the oil pan forward as I get ready to put one bolt in at a time. That way the other ones are still dripping, and if I don't have a bolt in there just yet, it's fine. Just thread that dude up in there. It's a pretty easy job. So again, take my pan, scoot it forward, turn it sideways there, and put the front plug in. So before I spin on the filter, I'm gonna move the pan out of the way just a bit, so I can come in here with a clean towel, and I'm going to wipe the oil, the old oil, off the seating surface, which is exactly what the service manual says. So I just finished cleaning up the mating surface here. There we go. Then spin on the new filter. Since it's going horizontal, this is the reason I didn't want to fill it all the way up, because it would just be dripping oil like crazy out of there. So 1/3 to 1/2 is fine. There is where it's made contact, the seal's made contact with the base. So now that it's seated, I'm going to do a 3/4 to one more turn, probably like 3/4, by hand. Don't tighten this with a filter wrench. It will be hell to get it back off. And that's it. It's tight. I've got this to where the plug just is touching. I haven't really tightened it up yet. And all I'm going to do is just... That's it. That's all I'm doing. You could feel where the washer bottoms out. That's exactly where I'm going to start tightening it. So if you rock the fastener back and forth with your ratchet, you can feel that bottom out spot, and then just snug it up a little bit, like maybe not even a 1/4 turn. And again, I've got my stubby ratchet here. This guy, I can't put a lot of torque on that because the arm's so short. So I don't worry about stripping these out. If you do the full torque spec that Indian specifies, you might be close. I tried it once, I'm never doing it again. It seems to be excessive to me, but that's just my opinion. Now for a little bit of housekeeping, I'm gonna clean the underside of the bike up. That way, if anything leaks, I'll catch it right away. And also, it's my bike, I wanna keep it clean. Being responsible, we're gonna get our used oil and put it into a container so it can be recycled. And I'm just gonna take this to the local oil change place. You could take it to AutoZone. Some parts stores will take recycled oil. Don't pour it out on the ground. Good grief. Will Mike make a giant mess? Stay tuned. I wouldn't suspect this on my new Scout. Well, my 6-year-old new Scout. But on cars, anything I normally change oil on, I'm looking for anything that looks metallic in the oil, and that's another good reason to drain it slowly. This oil looks perfectly fine. In fact, it barely got used because the bike was in storage. It may not seem like it, but the oil drain pan is a tool. It's not just something to throw oil into. I mean, yes, that's its primary function, but I clean my oil pan, the drain pan off, completely and religiously, because if you just leave this thing get filthy and you drop your oil, you won't be able to see contamination in it because there'll already be dirt in the bottom of the pan. So was it from the oil from your engine, or was it garbage that was in the pan? So it pays to keep this sucker clean. That way you can tell if you got a problem. I don't know how well you can see that, but there's definitely a ridge on there. Even if you tried to flip this over, I don't think that would seal completely. So, moral of the story is don't try to reuse these unless you have no choice. All right, get this light out of the way. All right, so the last bit is just to fill it up with oil, right? Just remove the dipstick, then drop 3 quarts oil into it. Probably need a funnel. And make life easier. You won't use all 4 quarts. I never have. All right, 3rd quart of oil going in. Yeah. I don't need to hold it that high. Oh. Quit it, Mike. Showing off. Good way to make a giant mess everywhere. That is the 3rd quart of oil. Time to put the dipstick back in, run it for 30 seconds, and then check the oil level. Unscrew this guy, clean it off. So, reinsert the dipstick. Fill plug, screw it down till it's tight. Then check the oil level real quick. So I am about, I don't know how well that comes up. I'm about right there on the dipstick. So I'm not gonna need an entire quart to get to. I don't wanna be at the tippy top full. I wanna be like maybe 3/4 of the way up. And then I'm gonna ride it, and when I come back from a short ride, I'll double check the level. In fact, you should be double checking the oil on a regular basis. It's a good way to determine whether or not the bike is running right, whether you're leaking oil, whether you're burning oil. You should check this regularly. I did a top off twice and ended up using exactly 3.5 quarts on my bike. They may not always be the case with yours, and also I haven't gone out and ridden this bike, so I will check it again after I ride it a short distance just to be safe. You can see now that it's right about at the full mark. Now once I take it for a ride, it's going to drop down slightly, but that's right where it needs to be. Probably the last tip that I have, especially if you've got this Indian accessory clutch pulley cover, when you tighten this down, it only needs to be tight enough that it's just seating the O-ring, but also I like to make this vertical or completely horizontal so it clears that cover. Otherwise, if it's like at an angle, it'll touch the end of that. So that probably needs to be clearanced, but that's the way Indian designed it. So the last thing I did after running it and then checking the oil level and running it and getting it right, you know, just barely to the full mark, I went around and checked it for leaks. I went underneath, you know, went over with a little blue shop towel and double check everything. Make sure you're not leaking from the filter or either one of the drain plugs. Make sure that you got the right amount of oil in there. And that's pretty much it. The moral of the story is, yeah, the video title's kind of clickbait, which is why I put a question mark in there. Do you absolutely have to have the service manual? Probably not. Most of the stuff is common sense. In some cases, you know, my opinion, I think that torque value for both the filter, the 13 Newton meters for the filter and the 20 Newton meters for the drain plugs, maybe a bit excessive. You know, use your best judgment. But like I said, I'm not a professional mechanic. I'm not affiliated with Indian, and you know, just do your best. Be careful. Again, I can't stress it enough. If you're not comfortable working on your bike, changing your oil, things like that, just take it to a shop. Take it to an Indian dealer or someone you trust to do the oil change. It's not worth risking it. It's not worth hurting yourself or burning yourself. So hopefully the little tips that I shared with this oil change will help you out there. If you choose to do it yourself, you don't have to buy Indian's oil. Just make sure you use the right weight. You know, by all means, use the proper crush washers. You can source a filter for somewhere else. You can save yourself a little bit of money if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, take it to a dealership. Don't mess up your bike. Anyhow, hope it was useful. If you liked it, give it the thumbs up, you know, like, subscribe, all that BS that makes it so that YouTube pushes the video up in the algorithm. And until I see everyone again, take it easy.